Well, everybody, we are on the main topic of our show today. We have a very special guest with us. His name is William Albrecht. Welcome, William.
Hey, how you doing, Father?
Really good. It's great to finally talk to you for this recording, because we've talked about doing this maybe for about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months.
Oh, for quite some time now. And it's fantastic to finally get around to talking and covering such an important topic.
It really is. And, every time we plan this, something came up. It's really
Yes.
funny how life is so busy. But why don't you tell my listeners, tell us about yourself a little bit. You're from Texas, aren't you?
That is correct. I'm from Texas, and I'm actually a convert to the Catholic faith. I actually began my life out pretty much without any faith at all. And then at quite a young age, I became a Protestant. And
wow.
I was actually a youth leader as well within various denominations. And I want to say I converted to Catholicism nearly 10 years ago now.
Now, did your family have any faith, or were they Protestants at the same time?
No, they had no faith at all, none whatsoever. So I came to the Catholic faith through a thorough historical study of not only the biblical text but as well of the Church Fathers also. And, there's no other way to go but Catholicism.
What really pushed you into the church?
What really was the biggest thing that pushed me had to have been the Deuterocanonical books. Studying the Deuterocanon and realizing that Protestantism had basically excised these from the canon, from what Christ had left us, the word of God. I studied that in depth, and I came to the conclusion that the church, Christ's church, the Catholic Church, had the complete Bible, and that was what began. That began my way home, and I thank God that I'm here home in the Catholic Church today. Well,
I thank God too. It's a gift. Anytime you talk to someone who has converted to the faith, they're usually much more fervent than we lifers.
Yes. Right. It's a wonderful thing. Celebrating in a Catholic Church. It's fantastic. It's completely different to that of Protestantism, of course, and I think it's important to emphasize that that Catholicism is those people that are born Catholic, they shouldn't take it for granted that they're gifted with such a wonderful faith, because so many people out there are deprived of such a beautiful faith.
That's true. And, I think in our time more than any other, I think people take the faith for granted because we have too many churches. And I think the Lord is, though, testing us because so fewer priests, so fewer religious, that we have to really struggle. And I think the struggle is going to get worse as churches close, people have to drive. But it's great to have you on the show. Now, tell me, your work, what is your work? What do you do?
Well, I'm an apologist, a Catholic apologist. I travel. I give talks at various locations. I also have participated in a number of debates. In fact, the topic that we're going to be covering today, I've debated on about 5 different occasions. And I want to say that the most wonderful thing about doing what I do, defending the faith of Christ, is, seeing people come to the faith. And every time a person tells me, they thank me for whatever it is I do, it's all for the glory of God. Everything is for God and through God. And I think it's wonderful seeing people gain not only a stronger grasp of their faith or coming to the faith, period. I find it, put it this way, if I go one day without reading the Bible or without studying the faith, I feel like I'm getting sick.
Now, what got you into doing this, evangelization and defending the faith?
I think what drove me the most was when I became a Catholic, when I converted to Catholicism. I lost all of my friends within Protestantism. All of them. I lost every single one. Nobody stood by my side. And I think the onslaught of attacks that I received each day from people attacking me on, infant baptism, veneration of Mary, purgatory, faith plus works, as they like to put it, all the attacks from every side, I realized that it was necessary. I would have to study and become educated in the faith. And through studying the faith more and more, I decided that I wanted to educate myself and make this a living. I wanted to defend the faith that God had left us for the rest of my life. And that's what pretty much drove me to doing what I do today.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, today we're going to talk about a special area of your work of evangelization and defending the faith called Sedevacantism. Most people don't understand what that means, but it comes from the Latin, meaning the seat is empty. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about what is Sedevacantism?
Well, in essence, Sedevacantists believe that the Catholic magisterium and all the popes since 1958 are anti-popes. And unfortunately, even though they deny it, in essence, they are pretty much saying that Christ's promise was a lie and that the gates of hell have prevailed. Their arguments usually surround the validity of the Novus Ordo Missae, of the new Mass. Their claims are usually that since the words have been changed in the consecration, that in essence, we do not have a valid Eucharistic sacrifice. Of course, there are a number of other arguments. They claim that the current reigning pope, and a few popes before were anti-popes because various claims. Some of them like to claim that they were involved in heretical activities. And a number of them also claimed that Vatican II was a false, that it was basically a robber council because it contradicted previous Catholic dogma. And of course, under thorough examination, we can see that all of these claims are completely incorrect. And I believe, in fact, I think it's important to point out that a good chunk, if not 99.9% of the arguments from the Sedevacantists come from one individual, and his name was Patrick Henry Omler. And this individual, unfortunately, was not educated, very well educated in not only the biblical text, but in the early church fathers. So a lot of the arguments that they pick up, they're taking them from him, and they're, to be as nice as can be, they're not very sophisticated.
Who was this man? When did he live? Or is he still alive? And where did he come from? Is he an American?
Patrick Henry Omler, he is still alive. In fact, a very good friend of mine by the name of Michael Duddy, he was actually very involved with Patrick Henry Omler in setting forth the movement, which has become so popular. Of course, people can attribute this to various individuals beforehand, but the individual that set this off in motion was Patrick Henry Omler. What he did is he wrote a number of articles attacking the Catholic faith. Of course, he labeled his beliefs to be traditional Catholicism. He said that the popes could not be popes because he made a number of claims saying that the documents of Vatican II contradicted previous claims. But the main thing that he relied upon was the validity of the Novus Ordo. His claim was that the Novus Ordo, when it says for all, is teaching universalism, that it is teaching that all people are going to be saved. And he, in essence, claims that since this changes the words of the Latin Mass, basically, that we do not have a valid Eucharistic sacrifice. And what he went ahead and did, from a number of articles that this individual wrote, Patrick Henry Omler, he compiled this into a book that is entitled The Robber Church. And that book set off a motion, individuals began to read this and think, well, hey, you know what, maybe this individual has a point.
Well, that's really funny because he's so ignorant, because if you go to the Latin, it says for the many. And
yes,
that's what we're going to be doing in the new translation that has been approved in this country. In many countries, never changed from for the many. It's always been for the many.
That is correct. And another problem that I see, and again, I'll bring up a very good friend of mine by the name of Michael Duddy, was actually involved with Patrick Henry Omler. They were very close in putting forth a lot of the material promoting Sedevacantism. But Michael Duddy left the movement of Sedevacantism not long back, and he's a great witness to the faith because he's pointed out a number of things in regards to the Novus Ordo, and pointing out how the documents that these individuals rely upon, they're simply reading into them. The documents are not as they attempt to put them forth. And Patrick Henry Omler, of course, he's no longer putting forth new material, but nevertheless, the individuals, and as harsh as it may sound, Sedevacantism is another form of Protestantism. It's simply tidied up, but it is nevertheless another form of Protestantism. Individuals that are taking authority upon themselves to depose the Pope. When in history has an individual had the power to depose the Pope? To be honest with you, Father, it is outrageous.
It really is. The funny thing is that these people, so many of them are such good people, and they're just confused, and they don't know the reality of what we actually believe. They didn't know the truth of the faith in the first place.
Yes, that is correct. And I think that's a wonderful point that you bring that up, Father, because another thing that Patrick Henry Almler failed to do when in putting forth his arguments in dealing with the new Mass, he failed to realize that when the Church Fathers talk about the Eucharistic words that are needed to the body and blood of Christ, each and every time you go to the Fathers, they're clear, such as Justin Martyr, Athanasius, a number of them. They tell you, this is my body and this is my blood. That is what is needed. Yeah, that's all you need. And the funny thing is, Patrick Henry Almler didn't understand the Greek word anamnesis, and the Fathers put forth that these words are all that is needed to bring forth a valid sacrifice. And they were unanimous in this, Father. They were unanimous about this.
And the reality is, if a priest is imprisoned, he doesn't have the liturgical books. So you take, for example, Father Maximilian Kolbe, St. Maximilian Kolbe. He was in prison. He doesn't have the liturgical books. I'm sure he knew some of the Mass by heart, as most of us do, but he had the very basics, and he had a little bread and a little wine, and that's all that was necessary.
That is correct. I think that's a wonderful point you bring up also, Father. Another thing, if you look to, people like try to claim that, Vatican II came in, or right when Vatican II came into motion, that, heresy all of a sudden enveloped the church. Well, come on, what are you saying? That Vatican II came and all of a sudden the devil entered and all of the bishops became rogue bishops immediately? What we have to look at is the church manuals that were being used prior to Vatican II and even afterwards, such as Tanqueray, such as Jungmann, and various others that are manuals on dogmatic theology. They're clear, Father. This is my body and this is my blood. They're as clear as the Church Fathers were clear. So the one problem we have is when we have individuals who aren't familiar with the Fathers, with the biblical text as well, and here they are coming forth and telling us that when the words for many are changed, you no longer have a valid sacrifice. Well, this teaching was alien to the Fathers, alien to the biblical text.
In reality, if you go to the Eastern Rite, that is not even what confects the Eucharist in most of the other Eastern rites. They believe it comes at the epiclesis. So, the reality is these people don't know theology. Very good people, well-meaning people, but I like the point you made, that in a sense they're a new form of Protestantism.
Yes, very true, Father, very true. And I think it's very important that you point out that they do not know theology, because and here's a very interesting point, Father. In arguing about the Novus Ordo Missae, Patrick Henry Almler, who originated this argument, and all of the other Sedevacantists have borrowed it from him, he says that at the Council of Florence, that the form was dogmatically defined. He says that here we go, look at Florence. Florence tells us you must have for many, and this was dogmatically defined. But the thing is, Father, if you look at the Council of Florence, no such thing is done. All we have is we're told what the Roman Rite, the form in the was. We're never told that this is being dogmatically defined. And unfortunately, Patrick Henry Almler, who wasn't very familiar with the church teaching, or much less with the biblical text, has tried to say, you know what, the Bible is clear. You must have for many. Well, how about you look at Luke 22:19? We don't have the words for many in Luke's account of the Lord's Supper. You don't have the words for many there. And an interesting thing, Father, is at the Council of Trent, this specific biblical text was formally defined as being a true Eucharistic passage. So how can you have this passage being formally defined and it lacks the formula for many that the Sedevacantists say is required? Yet you still have the Sedevacantists telling us that we don't have a true Eucharistic sacrifice.
Of course. Now, the reality is we're so blessed to live in this time because the Pope that we have now he's so open, he's so alive, he's so theological that he's reaching out to draw in those people. And, of course, the St. Pius X Society, they're not Sedevacantists. Maybe a few in there are, but the majority of them believe in the Pope, they love the Church, and this Pope is going to reconcile them. He really is the Pope of Christian unity. So what are all of these other people going to do when they reconcile? They have the old Mass.